1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hi everyone, nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. So great to see so many of you. I'm Ed Hamilton, and I'm going to speak to you today about paid or organic. Where should you be investing your budget? I'm going to leave about 5 minutes at the end for questions. There is a microphone, so I know it's a bit difficult to hear. So if you put your hand up at the end, you can ask a question via the microphone, and then I'll be able to hear you as well. So just to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Ed Hamilton, like I said. I spent about 8 years in media and creative agencies working on some amazing brands you can see in front of you. It was incredible, really, to learn how big brands, big budgets, lots of different media channels all can work together. But I decided to sort of take all of that experience and put it into a much smaller brand, but one that I felt really passionate about. So not many of you would have heard of us, but we're called Veloforte. We're a direct-to-consumer, all-natural nutrition brand. So we make sports nutrition for things like cycling, running, triathlons. And yeah, we're really innovative in the market. If you're into your sports, then go check us out. But I'm not here to talk about sports today. I'm going to talk to you about media channels, planning, buying, and where you should be investing your budget, because it is a really critical time with economic climate, with high ad rising costs as well. It's really difficult to know where you should be spending your time and resource, particularly for small to medium-sized brands. Can I get a very quick hand raise? How many of you are working in marketing teams for what you would say small, medium brands? Okay, great, quite a lot of you, perfect. So I think, firstly, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about what we've been doing the last couple of years. So we were a very typical small brand trying to scale, trying to grow at all costs, trying to get investment, basically trying to grow our revenue as quickly as we can to attract more investment and to become a bigger brand. And we realized that our ad costs were extremely high. We weren't really seeing the returns on those. And it got to a stage where we thought, we can't really carry on like this. We potentially would threaten the business by spending so much on advertising and not really seeing the returns. So we made quite a bold decision over the last 18 months to spend 80% less on ads, and we've still managed to deliver a 60% growth in revenue. Now, we really feel proud of that, because a lot of people will say, how on earth do you get 60% incremental revenue by spending 80% less on ads? And I'm going to tell you today, hopefully, a couple of tips and tricks that you can take to your brands to do a very similar thing. And the good news about this is we have managed to see the same number of acquiring more new customers, so if not more new customers, but at half the customer acquisition cost. We've also seen an increase in our repeat purchase rate, and our lifetime value is growing as well. So all things that put the business in a much healthier state, and to hopefully that we can then receive more investment to then build even further. So before I dive into this a bit more, I just want to set the scene and give a bit of context. So paid has always been the historical place and method to grow really fast. And 5 years ago, it was very normal to take huge investments, to put all of that investment into advertising, and to grow as fast as you can, build your teams as fast as you can. And frankly, the economic climate doesn't really lend itself to that anymore. That's really hard to do. Businesses are finding it harder to attract that investment. So how on earth do you then compete with some of these big brands, the big players in your sector, with much smaller ad budgets? So we found that was exactly our challenge. And traditionally, it has always been take the big brand mentality. Have big budgets, big teams, lots of offline media spend, often driving into retail environments. And that just isn't the fact of life in today's market, particularly with direct-to-consumer and e-commerce being such a big player now. So traditionally, back in 2022, when I joined Veloforte, it was always take that model, bring it to a small, medium brand, and do the exact same thing, but with much smaller budgets. And that's arguably impossible to do, because you have big brands in your sector who are spending loads to just be the number one all the time and to sort of outspend everyone else. So how do you compete? You need to make it count. And in our particular sector, we have a brand called Athletic Greens, who are very dominant in our sector. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of them. We're engaging with like 5,000 to 10,000 marketing messages per day. No one in this room needs to be told that. But it makes it even harder to compete with these brands who all they need to do is continue spending at a top of funnel awareness level, and the sales will keep coming through. But for us, little old us in the corner, how do we do that? Because we can't get that awareness level. We haven't got those budgets in order to do that. So like I said, we made the decision to focus much more on short-term sales, short-term revenue driving opportunities, and I'll hopefully tell you today that you could do the same and in order to win. So I believe that organic will help you win, and organic will help you lay some foundations to then spend at a greater level later down the line. So I'm not here to demonize paid advertising. I'm from a media agency background. I love paid advertising. I wish I could do more of it still now, but I'm just saying it's not a reflection on where the current market is. So before I get into organic channels, I think it's really important to mention the economics of all of this. I'm sure many of you in here are managing budgets, are managing different performance metrics in your marketing teams. It's really pivotal to know what a core set of metrics you're basing yourself from. What's your customer acquisition cost? What's your average order value? What's your cost of goods? What's your margins? What's your repurchase rates? And what's your lifetime value after 12 months? Now, there are so many more metrics you can get into here. I'm just giving you a couple of core ones that we particularly use, but it's really critical to understand what these are so you can benchmark yourself from now until where you get to in the future. And just because you might spend less on paid advertising doesn't mean you can forget these metrics, because you need to see what the overall efficiency of your marketing is, even if that turns into a very different type of spend through investing into organic channels. You need to see what your overall efficiency of marketing is and how you're acquiring those customers. So please do think about the economics of your business and what these metrics look like for your business before you sort of review your channels and where you're spending your money. So firstly, I really would emphasize to double down on the channels that work for your brand. Don't try and do everything. There are so many channels out there now. Everyone is engaging with their media in totally different ways. The media plan 5 years ago was 5 to 10 media channels. It's now 20 plus media channels. You can't do everything, particularly in small to medium-sized businesses with relatively small teams. So we've made lots of mistakes in the last couple of years with suddenly needing to have a TikTok strategy because TikTok's booming and everyone's on TikTok. Reality was our customers weren't really spending time there. So think about where your customers are spending time and double down on the channels that work for you and work for your business, and do one thing really well instead of trying to do so many channels half-heartedly. And then testing is pivotal as well. You kind of need to take a bit of a paid model into organic channels. Think about what works, test content at scale, try to understand what sticks and what doesn't, what resonates for your brand. It's really pivotal, to be perfectly honest. You need to think about what is working and try to test it as much as you possibly can where your resources and where your budgets allow. So, investing in organic content. I know this seems quite scary, and when we started a couple of years ago, we found it really hard. We basically had no organic content. We had no real way of producing our own content. We relied on basically buying influencers and buying content from people. It was really hard to do it. We simply just got started. We hired a photographer, very cheap, £300 a day, and we went and shot something and to see what would happen. And from now, we've sort of moved that process along. We now understand what works, how to shoot things relatively cheaply, how to shoot things on a more bigger scale. You don't need to go and hire a massive creative agency and a really expensive production team to go and do this. You can if you want to, but I would recommend starting small and just beginning and start making your own content for your own brand. And try to create content that sparks engagement. I think so much out there now is create loads of content. You've got to like fuel the algorithm with 10, 20 different pieces per day. To some extent that could work, but at the same time, sometimes less is more. One of our best pieces of content this year was jumping on the fact that Emma Raducanu was using one of our energy gels at Wimbledon. We had no idea that she was going to use it. We saw it on TV with our own eyes. We jumped on it, and it was one of the best performing posts we've seen. Same time, this is a brand called Surreal. Really loved this piece. They were bringing back a flavor, a banana flavor. They jumped on the Oasis comeback hype and put this out within a couple of days. And of course, it went viral. It had loads of talkability to it. So sometimes less is more. Focus on what's going to comment in your feed. Focus on what's going to be shared. Focus on what's going to be liked, because that helps the algorithm just as much as putting hundreds of videos out there. But think about tying it back to your content plan and what's topical, what's trending, what's relevant at a given time. Influencers. So I think influencers can be pretty demonized these days. Like it's so saturated, it costs so much money. I personally disagree with that massively. We haven't paid an influencer for the past 18 months, not a penny. I don't think you need to. Depending on sort of what your product is, of course, if you're a sofa brand, it's going to be quite hard to gift sofas on a regular basis. For us, it works really well because we have a relatively low cost of goods. So it means we can gift on quite a large scale basis, but we're not trying to sort of force people to post about us. We're simply giving out products, letting them try it, letting them become fans of the brand, because we have full confidence in what our product can do for people. But you have to build them authentically, and you have to treat them like friends. You can't just send a generic message and expect them to post. You have to really double down and care about them and show love and message them back to back and try to really invest in them as people as well. We've seen that people with followers of 2 to 20,000 is way better than people with 20,000 followers plus. That works really well for us. You get people who love the brand, feel really special, you get them posting on your behalf, and arguably the way their algorithm works is that they can post a piece of content and it still can get 1 million views even if they've only got 5,000 followers. So I'd encourage you all to go down the micro route because that's a cheap way to get relatively good reach. Try and tie it back to your content plan, try and understand what you're wanting to say in the next few months and try to give them some ideas about what to talk about and what to post. But let's be honest, you sending them a 10-page brief of what to post on your behalf is not going to work. You need to let them be creative. You need to let them sort of be themselves and be authentic. Using customers. This is another way that we've really relatively cheaply got quite a lot of reach for ourselves and got a lot of content without having to go and produce it ourselves. So these 4 examples here are customers, not influencers. We reached out to them, they loved our brand, we asked them to take a picture, they send this content, we can then use that in different ways. Use your reviews, use your customers, and they are like the lifeblood of your brand. They love your brand already, so let them do the hard work for you. So I really believe that building the foundations with some of those organic channels that I just talked about is a good way to get started, is a good way to sort of grow without spending huge amounts of money. Of course, there is an element of retention and CRM that you need to think about as well. That's probably for another day because we haven't got enough time today. But building the base of those organic channels to then let paid be the cherry on top is absolutely what we've done at our brand and what I believe in. Very quickly, I'm just going to talk about Google. We have used it relatively low level. We haven't spent fortunes here because, frankly, we can't. We have brands who have way bigger budgets than us, and we therefore can't be the #1 brand in Google because we can't compete with their spend levels. So what we've tried to do is learn in paid. We have a number of categories that our products are part of. For example, protein shakes. We have a really great protein shake, but we can't compete with the sheer volume of protein shake brands out there. So we therefore pulled back all of our spend from protein and invested it in an area that we can do really well in, like energy gels, and we've therefore doubled down on energy gels to get our paid conversions. At the same time, we've then used the protein shake area to invest in SEO. So we've taken the knowledge that we can't compete at a paid level in protein shakes. We've built loads of blogs and optimized our site around protein shakes to be super rankable in SEO, and therefore we're kind of offsetting the paid and getting a lot of free traffic and free clicks through SEO rankings. So I'd encourage you to sort of understand where you can get good conversions and cheap conversions in paid, and therefore spend the rest of your time on creating content that can rank from an SEO point of view. And then, as I mentioned, paid can be the cherry on top. I really don't want to be the person that is paid is absolutely not working anymore, because that's not the case. And you can definitely still add paid at the end of all of this, and then you can scale even faster. But I'd like to think our brand is a testament that you can still scale, you can still grow through not investing loads of money in paid. To be clear, we haven't spent a penny in Meta for the last 18 months, whereas before we were spending £30,000, £40,000 a month, and it wasn't really going anywhere. So do the foundations first, then add paid on top. And I think that's the recipe for investors as well. So organic foundations will lead to growth, as hopefully I've told you today. With growth comes investment, and investment then leads to paid later down the line. When you have the investment, when you're a healthy, stable business with good cash flow, you can then invest at the end of it and put your budget into good use. Finally, skills. I'm not sat here saying you can be a one-man band. It is hard. We've failed a lot in the past couple of years doing this. We had to hire new skills. We had to get people in that we didn't have in our team originally. We have an in-house creator I don't think everyone needs an in-house creator, but it certainly helps. It means you're not relying on influencers and customers to always create content for your brand. Having someone who's comfortable on camera, who can manage your social channels, is a really good hire in my opinion. Next is design, video editing skills. This could be an agency if you had an agency and you wanted it. We currently do it in-house, but if you have an agency and you want an agency, that is a good way to do it. There are some fantastic agencies out there that don't cost loads and loads of money, so again, don't just think agency means loads of costs, because it doesn't have to be. Influencer manager. All the things I talked about in influencers is hard and takes time, and I'm not going to dress it up to be glamorous, because it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of man hours to reply to these people, to message them, to engage them, to send out packs. There are so many like influencer tools out there which cost quite a lot of money. We've sampled them, turned them off, sampled them, turned them off. But I would personally stick to having someone who can do it for you. It's the best way. It's the best way to build authentic relationships. And then finally, for our sort of low-level Google activity and some of the other mini paid activity that we do have someone looking after that for us as well. But that's not many people, but I'd encourage you guys to think about the roles in your team and how you feel you can optimize them. And I think that is me. I think I've left enough time, so if anyone wants to wait for a microphone or put your hand up for a question. Any questions at all? Don't be shy. There we go, thank you.
Can you tell me more about learning in paid and then acting on SEO?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah. Can you tell me more about learning in paid but acting on SEO? What do you mean by learning in paid? A bit like in a bit more detail and example.
Yeah, so we originally didn't really change much of our paid activity. We pulled back all the spend, like I talked about. We pulled back all of our meta advertising and lots of like collaborations that we did, spending lots of partnership style money, and we focused on Google. And originally we were trying to compete in every product category that we possibly could think of, and we just weren't really getting anywhere. Our returns weren't particularly good. So like I said, we tried to only focus on certain subcategories within our business. I guess it depends on sort of the nature of your product and what you're trying to sell. But try not to spend in every keyword, topic, theme that you could think of. Try to spend in micro, mini areas, and that's where you can get your cheap, really high returning conversions from. And at the same time, even though I think SEO is a massively undervalued area, I think you can get really good results from investing in SEO, particularly with AI now. You can create blogs for really, really cheap, and you can. A really good technique actually is creating, 10, 20 blogs via an AI chatbot, posting them, seeing what ranks, and then optimizing them after that. You don't necessarily need to have the perfect finished blog article to begin with. See what ranks, see what gets traffic, and then adapt it. So yeah, it's kind of offsetting each other versus paid traffic versus free, and don't think that you have to pay for loads of clicks all the time. You can get traffic in more SEO free ways. Anyone else at all? There's one right over there.
Thank you. Do you think this could actually work for FMCG categories where consumers don't really go to your website to buy products?
Where they don't go to buy, did you say?
Yeah, FMCG, like they have to go to that retailer to get your product. Do you think this could still work for them?
I personally think so, yes. We have a lot of, admittedly, 90% of our revenue comes from our website, so we don't have retail stores. But I personally think the same thing applies. You're still trying to build reputation, you're still trying to make people love your brand via influencers, via social. So I think doubling down in those social areas will still make people think, where can I go to get this product? It just means that you need to have a really good, well thought out website, I think, and make sure that the user knows how to go and find your product. Don't sort of have a website that makes them think, I need to buy it from this particular place. Like, think about the journey that the customer's going to. Just one over there.
Sorry, I'm squeezing in a little cheeky question outside of the area. So we have quite a big amount of business coming through paid Google advertising. And one of the main challenges we're facing is the point you made about people bidding on your keywords. Outside of generic, we have people bidding on our brand keyword, which is risen significantly this year. So CPCs have really skyrocketed, which means it impacts your ROAS and revenue. Now, we don't want to come out of that because we need that to get existing customers on board because our SEO isn't up to scratch. But what would be like your key recommendations for that? Would you say, cut spend either way because you just simply can't afford to bid on it? Or would you invest place your eggs in a different basket and focus on more kind of long form search terms?
So we actually have had a similar thing. So I think everyone has different opinions on this. I personally think protect your brand at all costs is my view. I think it's better to protect your brand and keep your brand being number one for your brand versus letting other people get involved. So I, obviously within reason, right? You can't just keep spending every single pound you have on protecting your own brand. But we have tried, so we've spent more in there and cut areas elsewhere in order to protect our brand first. And I actually like the game of chess. Like, I think go after your competitors. We've done that too. The more you sort of threaten them and tease them, the more they might think, oh, let's leave them to it. So yeah, that would be my advice. One more, if anyone wants one. Only time for one more. Everyone want to go get lunch. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Oh, sorry. One more question. Sorry.
What part would promotions play in your strategy?
So, very topical because we've had to sweat our existing customers much harder taking this approach. So 20 to 25% of our revenue is new customer. That used to be 35, 40% a couple of years ago. So we're not getting as much volume, but we're getting better quality new customers. But then once they're in, you typically have to sweat them a bit harder. So we are sort of trying to do bi-monthly offers in order to keep those people buying, keep repurchase rates high. We're quite lucky that our product is typically loved on first purchase, so people do come back. But I would encourage you to have a relatively regular offer strategy, knowing that you're not going to be offering people for years to come. You're not going to become a discount brand, but you need to have the offers fairly regularly to keep those repurchase rates high. If your repurchase rates are fine, don't worry about it. But I think if you are struggling and not quite hitting your revenue targets, then I'd add the odd offer in there. Think about targeting and segmentation. You don't necessarily need to send every offer to every person. Like, you can still be a premium brand and offer people discounts and incentives. Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone. Nice to meet you all. See you soon.